Okay, so now we're in question number 7 on the ACT English test. Let's begin by reading the sentence as is. At first, a young elephant will drink by kneeling down at the water's edge, and it sipped directly with its mouth. Okay, so when you read through here, the first thing you want to recognize is that this is a parallelism question. Parallelism. And I will write that down here. Parallelism. And parallelism has a couple of different forms that we'll go into right now. Okay, so to assess parallelism, what we're really doing is assessing that each part of speech shares the same form. And I'll show you a couple of examples of what I mean. So if words share the same verb form, then I would notice that they would have the same ending, such as running and sliding. I wouldn't want to incorrectly bring in two different verb forms, such as running and to slide. In this case, and you don't need to know this, this is the infinitive form. If you've taken Spanish, that might be familiar to you. In ing words, this is the gerund form. Again, you don't need to know this, but just know that there are distinctions between these two types. And this is why when you say running and sliding, that sounds smooth. And when you say running and to slide, that sounds awkward. So you would never see this in a sentence and it would appear awkward to you. And that's a good way of assessing parallelism without having to actually know the rules. Now, it doesn't just happen with verbs. It could happen with any part of speech, such as adjectives. She is sweet, kind, and funny. Versus she is sweet, a kind person, and funny. And when you talk about parallelism, what you're saying is that this breaks form, right? It breaks that pattern. She is sweet, kind, and funny. She is sweet, a kind person, and funny. Likewise with adverbs, quickly, quietly, happily. Quick, quietly, while happy. This breaks form. So I think at this point you can see that parallelism can be recognized using subvocalization. That's where you hear how it sounds and you find the one that sounds the smoothest, or the one that doesn't sound jarring. So now let's go back to the test, and let's see how we can assess parallelism in this passage here. So at first a young elephant will drink by kneeling, that's my ing, down by the water's edge, and it sipped directly with its mouth. Let's look at the other answer choices, and why don't you take a second and figure out which one you think is correct. Okay, if you said sipping, then this would be the correct answer, because it also has this ing. It's a little clue that lets us know that this follows parallel form, whereas this one breaks form. Let's read it with C and see how it sounds. At first, a young elephant will drink by kneeling down at the water's edge and sipping directly with its mouth. Do you see how that sounds better and it follows parallel form? Why don't we try a couple other options? We know that A is wrong. Let's try B. At first, a young elephant will drink by kneeling down at the water's edge, which it sips directly with its mouth. That does not keep parallel structure, therefore it must be wrong. D. At first a young elephant will drink by kneeling down at the water's edge that sips directly with its mouth. That one sounds very awkward. And the word that makes it a little ambiguous as to know if we're talking about the elephant or something else. So this is ambiguous at best. And again, that leads us with answer choice C. So we can see that it follows parallel structures. We have two gerunds here, but you don't have to rely on that to figure this answer out. What you're going to want to do is read them, figure out which one sounds the smoothest, and the one that sounds the smoothest will have parallelism, which means that both of the elements are the same. They have parallel form. Now, another way of assessing this is the concision technique, and that's where we pick the most concise answer, and we start with that one. And the most concise answer would be the one that has the least amount of words in this case. So we wouldn't want to start with A, and we wouldn't want to start with B. And that would lead us with two options, C or D. Now, if we read both of them just like we did now, we would subvocalize it, which is where we hear how it sounds. And we would notice that C sounds smoothest, just like we did here. And that's another way of going about this, and remember 80% of the time, that'll get us to the right answer. So even if you didn't understand what parallelism was, or you didn't even recognize that this was a question having to do with parallelism, the concision and subvocalization technique would have got you to the right answer anyways. So let's recap what we did here. The first thing we did is we went into what parallelism was. We went through a couple of different structures that you would see, and notice that the best way to assess parallelism is by subvocalizing it, so we can see if it sounds smooth or if it sounds jarring. Next, we went through each of these answer choices. We recognized that we had an ing here, which is a gerund. You don't need to know that, but just know that that's what we're talking about here. We found the one that had the same parallel structures. We circled that. And then we went through the other answer choices to recognize that they were awkward. Finally, we went through our concision subvocalization technique. In case you didn't recognize that this had to do with parallelism or you forgot what that was, you would know that you would have gotten to the right answer anyways, which is answer choice C. Thank you.